Welcome back to the Late to Grid podcast. This is your host, Bill Snow, and I am interviewing today Kris McCrone. And I don't even know where to begin with Kris, and we're going to get to him in a minute. But if you are a returning listener, thank you so much for listening and being part of the podcast. And hopefully you're learning something along your motorsports journey. And if this is the first time you're listening, thanks for checking us out. So as I mentioned, I have Kris McCrone. And Kris, I don't know where to start. McCrone Motorsports, Ohio Kart Parts, Ohio Motorsports Park, 3/10, the Ohio Sprint Series. You got a lot going on. How did I get you on this episode?
I appreciate Bill. That was great. No, yeah, we do have a lot going on. We're definitely blessed. We've taken on a little bit, probably often times more than we can chew. There's no doubt about that. But my partner Nick and I, we often joke back and forth that we were counting on one or two really good ideas and sticking out of the 100 that we come up with, and so we've noodled down to a handful of things that we're really putting our emphasis on, and you kind of hit on that. This McCrone Motorsports was the initial, that was the catalyst to all this. Ohio Motorsports Park, that's a big undertaking. I just came from a big meeting that we had for the park. And then you have Ohio Kart Parts and 3/10 race products, Ohio Sprint Series. There's so much going on, but we've got a lot of really good people around us. And on the Sprint Series, it's really fortunate that when we acquired the Buckeye Karting Challenge and Scott Smith was able to stay on board and help in the transition. I'm heavily relying on him, especially through round one. And then with the other entities, we're ramping up staff right now. So we actually have a gentleman that will be moving here from Indianapolis to join our team here before the end of the month. And the build out of that staff occurs all throughout the month of May, June, and July. So we're looking forward to having some great people, and there's no way we could do it without them, for sure.
Yeah, that's great. So let's talk a little about Kris McCrone, your motorsports background. How did you get involved in racing and motorsports?
Yeah, I was a little tyke. My father and brother were involved with racing before I was actually even born. I was born in '78. My brother ran in the '70s in karting, and it was a lot different than it is today in karting. And then in the '80s and '90s, I got involved in karting, and I was kind of like I would say I was good at two sports. I participated in other sports, but I had talent in racing and in hockey. And so up through the early '90s, as I was in high school, and my brother's career was kind of coming to a point where he needed to make a decision on what the next steps were going to be, like Indy Lights or at the time Super V or something of that nature. And I needed to make a decision on what I was going to do with motorsports. And at the time, I had an opportunity with hockey to accelerate my career through a pretty high level at the high school level, and then collegiate hockey as well. And my brother was chasing a dream in motorsports, and we were at the time negotiating a deal with CarQuest and Dan Sussin, who was based out of Cleveland at the time, and that's when my father got sick and he went to the hospital. And that week, he actually passed away, completely unplanned. I had no idea he was sick. My mom, being a wonderful wife that she is, she kind of kept it quiet from all of us. She was the only one that knew my dad was sick. And so he went to the hospital on Monday and he died within 4 days. And that was a difficult time. And so from there, I really walked away from motorsport in regards to the participating level. I would attend some events here and there, kind of like in my dad's memory, but it was never the same. I didn't enjoy it anymore. And went through a period of my life, just some really, really bad habits, and not proud of a lot of the decisions I made, and some, riffs with friends, riffs with family, and just wasn't really proud of, who I was becoming. And then so years later, it's about 18 years later, it was 2018, and I got remarried. And my two stepsons and my two boys, I had biologically two boys and two girls, and my wife had two boys, and the four older boys were looking through pictures, and they found the racing photos, and they're like, "Dad, who's that?" And I'm like, "That's your grandpa, and it's your uncle," and it was Roger Penske. And so my father kind of knew these people, from Cleveland area. And so He was also part of the championship auto racing teams, which was kart, the old IndyCar. When back there was a race here in Cleveland, it was called, kart, put on the event, and he worked in tech. And so he had a relationship with a lot of people. So I grew up in the sport in a big way. I was very, very fortunate from the people I met, the people I built relationships with. And then roughly 18 years later, my kids got me back into it, and we rented a couple go-karts one day from our friend Kid Henry at Fremont Raceway Park, and he was operating it at the time, and the rest is kind of history. We bought karts that day, and 5 years later, sold our business, and we're all in on everything motorsports, which is kind of like I feel back home, which is great.
Wow, what a journey! And yeah, sorry, of course, I know it was many years ago, but losing your father like that sounded like it was difficult. But it's all about the journey, and you are where you are now. Are the boys still karting? Are they still involved in racing?
Yeah, so it's interesting. It's a great question, Bill. Yeah, so my biological oldest, Colin, and my oldest stepson, Michael, they are both seniors in high school. They're graduating. They're not racing at all. Colin really took a liking to baseball, and he's, matter of fact, he's got a game tonight, so he's pitching tonight. So he took the turn for some other sports, basketball and baseball and such. Michael was a hockey player, and he finished his year at high school with hockey as well. And he drove a little bit. I think he really likes the sport, but he just wasn't, really into everything else involved in racing and all, sitting around the track all day long and having to be patient, waiting heat to heat and heat. So that was a challenge for him. So he loves racing, but I think he really enjoys the hands-on, the stuff that keeps your mind going all the time. And then Lucas, my stepson, the younger boy, he is still karting. He just turned 14 in October, and my son Christopher is also 14. He got out of the kart. Very talented driver, a lot of natural skill, but loves the operations and engineering side of racing and motorsports. So he'll come to the track and he wrenches on the karts, and so he helps his stepbrother Lucas a lot. He helps, and then my oldest daughter Anna, she's actively racing. So Christopher will wrench on Anna's kart and Lucas's kart, and he actually has a pretty good knack for it. So things like technically where you're changing gears and you're understanding why and you're looking at data, he picks up on it pretty quickly, and he's able to share that information and then do the work on the kart and help them, which is great. And then so the youngest, Cora, she's my drama queen, right? She's the one that's going to be probably in Hollywood someday, or who knows, maybe get me in trouble. Who knows, right? She's definitely the one that's she's musically talented. She's an artist, artistically talented. She's a wonderful personality, but she's definitely she's not into racing a go-kart.
That's all right. So Anna's racing, right?
Yep.
Is that 206, or is she racing a two-cycle?
Yeah, she ran 206 last year for the full season. She really she learned a lot just on developing her racecraft. That was the whole focus. I tell all the new parents to come in with us, and I probably am losing money when I say this, but I tell the parents all the time, when you buy a go-kart and you're getting your kids started at age, 5, 6, 7, 8 to 10, 11, in that, what's called the cadet area, right? Or sportsman, it's not about all the data. It's not about all the bells and whistles. Get the kid in the car and let them drive. And, outside of a gear ratio being way off or something like that, or trying to understand a certain tire combination or compound that you got to run, don't make a lot of changes and drive 1,000 laps. My dad used to say all the time, I'm not changing anything on your kart, Chris, to do 1,000 laps. And there's a lot of value in that, because it allows these young kids to understand what the car does in different conditions. They don't, you're out there by yourself and you're ripping laps. That's great. But when you start getting in traffic and you're running a club race with 6, 7 guys or gals out there, and now you're learning traffic, and it's scary sometimes. It's your first time seeing a guy go zipping by you as you're diving into a corner. It makes your butt pucker a little bit, right? So you got to learn all these things first, then start talking about changes in the chassis and what does this change do, and then looking at the data and figuring out, okay, hey, corner entry, corner exit, mid-corner, braking, acceleration. wheel speed and all the other wonderful things that the sport can teach you, but you'll never understand it unless you get the feel of it first. So she did all that last year. That was the whole year. And then we're transitioning to the Swift engine. So I have a personal belief that there's room in the sport for 4-stroke and 2-stroke racing. There, by all means, there is. I made the decision as a dad to put her in the 2-stroke this year because I want her to get the feel of what a 2-stroke does. And I'm not the dad that will run 2-stroke, 4-stroke at the same time. It's a very different skill set. So this year we're going to focus solely on 2-stroke racing. She may jump into a 4-stroke, club race here or there just to get time in the seat, depending on the gaps in the schedule. But the focus is going to be 2-stroke for sure.
Got it. Do you get behind the wheel of anything anymore?
I would love to. The overweight, not out of shape with all the work the last 3 years, but 2 years ago was the last series. I ran in the Stars Championship Series, and had a great time. Ran a couple of the Buckeye Karting Challenge races. Typically top 3 contender in all the events we ran. I know I'm working on a athletic program right now where we're calling it the Kart Elite program, and it's a karting athleticism, and it's with a group out of Lorain, Ohio, Exercise Science and Performance Training, ESPT, and so I'm kind of the study guy, right? So I spent the last month, beginning to stretch muscles I haven't stretched in a long time, and now here in April start really getting after things a bit. But I think this year with our facility, I probably will get behind the wheel quite a bit, just so I can communicate and speak the same language as the drivers at our track.
Sure. As they say in the business world, eat your own dog food, right?
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah.
I could say drink your own champagne, but dog food, the dog food one seems to get talked about more. So let's go back to last year, because last year was full of announcements, lots of news going on in the organization. And then after you talk about 2022, I want to go in a little bit more on the business side of what you have going on, as well as the motorsports complex and all that kind of stuff. So last year, what were some of the big announcements and the projects that you undertook?
Yeah. So I'm going to go back a little further prior to 22. In 21, sure. There were a few things that got launched. So how Kart Parts got started, which is a full-service kart supply store. We started off with the Burrell brand, and it's just because I believe in the brand. I think it's a well-made product. It's a product that when I was a kid I never could afford the product, and I wanted to supply that level of service to the marketplace in Ohio, and worked with my friend Austin Queen at QG3 Karting, and he had a little dealership going on, and we were growing, and so we basically kind of took over his dealership at the time. And great group, great product, and then we started selling some ancillary consumables. Really, with never having the intent of doing anything other than that, then growing that slowly. And then with that was 3/10 race products. And 3/10 race products, it's after my dad, actually. So my dad, his death certificate says March 11th. That's because the doctor needed to come in to sign off on the certificate, and he got there a couple minutes after midnight. But my dad passed away on the 10th. And why that's relevant is my dad, when I was a young kid, he would often say, Christopher, 90% of the speed that you have at the track is in the preparation you do before you ever get there. You're chasing tenths of a second when you arrive, or at least the fast guys are chasing tenths of a second when you arrive. So it was kind of beat into my ideology of the sport, which is preparation, preparation, preparation. And the original company was called 2/10. But we went to trademark it, and we found out that it was already taken. So my attorney said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, 3/10 available. And unknowingly, it was my dad's death date.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. And then he said, no, it's available. And then after we had it and we drew the logo out, I'm like, wait a minute, March 10th. Well, that's the day my dad passed away. So wow. That's kind of how it was, I was chasing 2/10. that it was for my father. It was 2/10. It was built around my dad dying. I wasn't going to call it 1/10. Like, that just didn't sound right. So we called it 2/10 originally. But then it ended up being 3/10, and it was the day he passed away. So, I believe in those God wink moments, and I think that was one of them. So those are the two things that happened in 2021. McCrone Motorsports, I kind of started in 2019, and it wasn't a big announcement. We just kind of grew it to support the racers in the community. But then that all led up to 2022. So in 21, I had this dream. I walked out of my office and I saw this plot of land, and I said, "Hey, we can build a go-kart track near, Northern Ohio." And so we started pursuing it. And I talked to my wife about it, and I'm like, "Hey, this is kind of the dream I had, this vision I had." I'm like, "What do you think?" And she's like, "Well, see what happens." So we walked down that path, and we found a piece of property, and it wasn't in Lorain originally. And we got after it, letters of intent, and, doing studies, and a little bit of initial engineering work and design work, and what's it going to take to build this. And at the 11th hour, the seller of that property unfortunately increased the cost to us. And at that same day, I got a phone call from a very good friend of mine. He's actually a small owner in our entity. His name's Kris as well. And he said, "Hey, I talked to my friend Brad," who I knew Brad as well, but I haven't seen him for a few years. And he said, "Hey, he's the chairman of the Lorain Port Authority, and he's talking about how Porsche built this racetrack on, dormant, toxic brownfield land in California, and they did this whole EPA case study on it, and how the city of Lorain has brownfield land. Will you talk to him?" I'm like, "Well, Kris, I'm going into this meeting tonight to sign this contract to build, in another city." And he's like, "All I can tell you is I just have a feeling, whether it's the Holy Spirit, whatever it may be, I'm telling you, don't sign anything." So that happened. I go into the meeting, and in the meeting, the seller changes the price on me. And so I'm like, this is my sign. I look at because my wife was with me at the meeting, and I'm like, "Steph," and she goes, "I think you shouldn't sign anything." And so we just asked to sleep on it. "We'll get back to you." And I need to go talk to my counsel, right? That was my little, right? And the next morning, I had a conversation with Brad. He put me in touch with Tom Brown, who's the Port Authority Executive Director, and his Assistant Executive Director, Tiffany McClelland. And really the rest is history. It was months of, yes, we can do it, but you got to convince Lorain City Council. So this is back in 21. We're doing Zoom calls, right? So I'm doing Zoom council meetings, and Kris, myself, to Tom Brown, Brad Mullins, all these guys they're wonderful people, and they helped us a ton, but it took a long time. And then finally we got it was December of 21, we had the city who in council passed the legislation that 11-0 for the letter of intent for the property. So then that's where to your point, which is getting to 22. So all of 2022, I sold my business. I went all in. I picked up a couple family and friend investors, and we invested a lot of money in the engineering and the design to validate, can we build a track here? And it took us almost until middle of summer to get the yes, you can. And then that was the announcement. So then it became, all right, we're finalizing our investor group, and we partnered with Nick Jarmuschek from Skylift and his team, and another Lorain company. And he's a wonderful guy who's a big visionary. And people call us crazy, the big visionaries, right? You guys are crazy, right? And I've rarely ever met somebody crazier than me, but this guy's got me for sure. And I love talking to him. I really do. He just pushes the edge of the envelope all the time on what can be done. And he's a great partner for us. And so that started, and we got through middle of the third quarter, fourth quarter, and got everything pushed through. And now the land's transferring, scheduled for closing date. The initial 204 acres are transferring immediately. We got another 230 approximately acres on option. And we're not interested in building something small. I mean, we're building a world-class motorsports entertainment complex, and we're loosely using the name Ohio Motorsports Park right now because we don't know what we might call it. We're thinking more of the theme, like, you think Disney World, right, Bill, where you've got Disney World, then you got like Disney Springs, Animal Kingdom, ESG, and so on. There's different verticals. Same thing. We're going to have a 2.5 to 3 mile long road course. We're going to have a world-class FIA certified kart track. We're going to have a rental track. We're going to have an indoor kart track that we're looking to partner with. We're working with a kart manufacturer that currently has their equipment manufactured in Italy to come over and manufacture a homologated chassis in Lorain, Ohio. There's so much going on here right now. And the meeting I was at before here was we're meeting with restaurateurs right now and really focusing on, okay, hey, how do we give people a great experience? And so it should be a one-of-a-kind park, at least for now. I know it won't be forever. Someone else probably is going to come out with a better widget or better idea, but for now, we really believe this is a very unique facility and definitely a one-of-a-kind facility in the U.S.
Wow. Man, does your head ever hurt thinking? And I'm not trying to be funny, but you think about these big tasks, and you had to get 11 people on council to say, yeah, this is a good idea. You had to get the Port Authority to say, and this is where we start touching on some business stuff, which I love. Just like Christopher, your son, likes the operation side and the mechanics of it. I love the business side of motorsports. I mean, so you have to be Kris McCrone, have to be a good ops guy. You got to be a good sales guy. You got to politic a little bit. Does your head ever hurt from having to do all this and think about, man, am I in too deep? Is this project too big?
Oh, I mean, I would be lying to you if there wasn't moments in this journey that I wasn't sitting on my pillow at night and look over at my wife and I would say to myself, like, what the hell am I doing? Like, this is crazy, right? And but then, like I said, there's this vision I had, and I am a man of faith, and this vision I had from God, it was like, I don't think that he would have given me this vision if he wasn't going to see me through it. And I really just don't. And so my faith has grown immensely in the last 3.5 years. And every obstacle that we've come across, every time I get hyper, and I need to give a credit to a couple of big guys that have been part of this project. So I mentioned Tom Brown from the Port, Nick, my partner, obviously, and his son, NJ, and the president of Skylift, Mike Naughton, and Nick Sakevich. These guys are all wonderful people that have been just kind of like in my corner on the partnership side. But our development partners, Mike Bossetti from Sortis Design, he's out of Bellevue. We've got Gary Fisher Architects in Lorain. Every time that I would get down, they were always there just to give me that little breath of air in my sails. My wife, I'd come home and she could always tell when I'm not myself, and she's like, what's going on? And I remember times where she would say, hey, it's going to work out, or she would just go take care of something with the kids and give me the space I needed so I could think through things. And and then our attorney, Ryan Gambala. I mean, we definitely would not be here without him and him negotiating all the contracts. And it's not like there's been people, yes, there's some people that are not for the project, Bill. We've had our naysayers too. And it's unfortunate because, we really don't want to see anything bad happen to the property. Frankly, we're going to beautify the property. That's the truth. But we dealt with some of those challenges too. But these gentlemen and a couple ladies, they've just always been there to encourage at the right moment, at the right time, and the right words. And so no, yeah, I'd be lying to you if I said I didn't come to those thoughts sometimes. But if it weren't for these great people that are part of the project today, I don't think I'd be around, kicking it around still.
Yeah. So I want to hone in on something for the listeners so to make sure that they're taking away some valuable nuggets here. So what Kris talked about was surrounding yourself with great people. And, I like to say, basically look around who you're surrounding yourself with, because that's really a reflection of you. And if you don't have sometimes people say, who do you have at your table or who do you have in your room? And in your case, you have all the right people assembled that they know their area of expertise. They're going to best support you and get you and their collective goal across the goal line or across the finish line, however you want to look at that. So that's a good nugget to share with the listeners about. Make sure you're connected up with the right people, because it can make it happen, or if it's the wrong people, they can make it not happen.
Yeah, they're definitely. There were people that worked on our project and were involved that they were there for a season, and that was their season, and they're no longer involved in a day-to-day capacity, whether it's customer or vendor, whoever it may be, and it's very, very important, Bill. I mean, I came from a meeting today with all the constituents I just share with you, and I had to leave to come join you for this call here today, and they were still pounding things out, and they're like, "Hey, we'll get back to you tomorrow morning. We'll give you our feedback." Right? So these guys are way smarter than me, Bill. Like I don't know anything about development. I don't know anything, but these guys do. I mean, these guys have built. I mean, Mike Possetti has built hundreds of millions of dollars in projects, from schools to stuff for NASA to so they know what they're doing. Our architect has built amazing facilities. I mean, there's restaurants in Cleveland that everybody here knows about, that he was the designer on all of them. So he's a really good guy, and I just feel blessed that these guys are local to the area. They know Lorain.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm going to kick myself if I don't ask. So the original property, why did the owner increase the price at the 11th hour?
I never really got an answer. I can give you why I thought. So as we got further along in the process, he learned how the current sport has become a bit more affluent. And I believe that he thought there was a lot of revenue on an opportunity. Now, the truth is, yes, there's affluent people in our sport, but we're not building the sport. We're not building a track just for the people that are wealthy. That's not what we're doing. And that particular property was a little less than 30 acres. So we only would have been able to have one track. And so the economics would have worked at the pricing discussed. But when he increased it the amount he did, I showed him the books. I said, hey, here's the projection. If you increase it to what you're talking about right now, I said, our return goes well over 20 years. And I said, my investor group's never going to consider that. So there's no point in conversation. So then he started peeling it back, trying to get down to the original price. And like I said, I just believe it was kind of God protecting me from that situation. And not that he's a bad guy, because he's a wonderful gentleman, very, very kind. And he's trying to capitalize on something that he invested in too. So I get it. It's business. But and I think it all worked out for the betterment of the facility and the impact on Lorain, because the impact on Lorain can be far greater than where we were at before. We are going to partner with the schools, and we're going to day camps in the summer for the kids, and it's going to really be focused. We want racing to become, when you see the third grader in the city of Lorain schools, and they say, hey, Bill, what do you want to be when you grow up? And everybody says, I want to be a fireman, I want to be an attorney, I want to be a doctor. Well, it's because that's what those kids see every day. They see him on TV. They see him in school. I want to be a teacher. That's all that they see. But our goal is to make motorsports so common themed inside the city of Lorain that we become the go-kart capital of the world. And these young kids graduate 5th grade and 8th grade in high school and are like, hey, I'm going to work in motorsports. Like, it becomes second in nature to them, right? Like, you're almost the oddball if you don't work in the sport, right? So that's our goal, right?
Yeah, this will be the next Mooresville or Charlotte, right?
Yeah, so self-proclaimed, U.S. go-karting capital of the world. So
I love it. Quick side story. So I recently hosted a Motorsports Expo at Boss Indoor Go-Karts.
Oh yeah, great.
Channel 5 showed up, or they contacted me a couple days ahead of time and said, hey, we're looking for something interesting to share. Can we come and do a couple live remotes that morning? We had 2 families show up that saw it on Channel 5. So one was a dad and a son, and one was a mom and a son. And one son was probably 8. The other one looked to be maybe 12 or 13. They both came because they had a desire to get into motorsports. They've seen some kart racing on YouTube and stuff, had zero idea of how to actually get started. So they came and said, hey, maybe we could learn a little bit here. And they did. They got connected up with a couple of people that sat them down and said, hey, if this is what your sons want to do, here's how they can progress. So the reason I bring that up is there is absolutely a need for what you are creating. out in Lorain. I think this is awesome. I'm getting goosebumps. I'm getting excited about this.
We're excited to have you out there for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe
so,
you can do the Late to Grid podcast at our location one day.
We can absolutely do that. That'd be a lot of fun. And for what we do every day, with Radiator Complete Car Care, we're constantly looking for fun experiences for our team members. Let's go out and let's do a team building. Let's do a reward something or another. Your place sounds great. As a matter of fact, we're building 2 endurance race cars, so hopefully there'll be an endurance race at your facility someday.
I love it.
Yeah. So when I make this available on YouTube, I'm going to post an image of the proposed layout of all the the different tracks and everything.
Yeah.
What is the timing on the project? When do you hope to have the grand opening?
Yeah, great question. So on that image you're referencing, I want to be clear so your audience knows that the 2 go-kart tracks are done. There may be a slight adjustment on the design strictly for practicality reasons, like, making sure we can fit a building in and something like that. But the overall, I would tell you they're 95% accurate to that drawing. The large road course track and the dirt track, those still need to be designed. Those were sketched. What I can tell your audience is that it's about 3 miles long on the road course. We're going to be kind of like a private and membership-based facility. We hope to have events to what I would call like the tier 3 on the professional level, like your F4 circuit, your F3 races, whether it's through the F2000 Pro Championship Series, the Formula Atlantic Series, we are having conversations with the NASCAR Truck Series. We'll have the facility designed to where it's the level of safety enough for them to race. So NASA, SCCA, love to have the long track endurance go-kart racers out there. There's nothing. I mean, for people that haven't seen a super kart on a track, it's unreal what they see, right? So, and to be that close to it. So I wanted to clarify that when you show the image that the kart tracks are done, but the other ones. So to answer your question about timing, the groundbreaking of excavation, it'll be in April sometime. It's just weather dependent. We are being told from our developer, Mike, and the team that he's putting around in subs and so on and so forth. We were told that they're going to be excavating and pouring track in sometime either in April or May and June. It takes about 6 to 8 weeks to get that done. And then there's the normal curing process. There's an additive that you can put in asphalt today for karts to actually help. The advantage that we have is actually the ground that we're on. Part of it is brownfield, so it's previous dump and burn garbage site. So there's a lot of dirt, and then there's a clay cap. So the ground that we have is very favorable for a track. Obviously there's going to be a base and drain tile and all that stuff to protect it, but we're being told at least that it is a very favorable site. So with the additive to the asphalt, or flexible pavement as they call it, they're telling us it's 2 to 3 weeks of cure time. So we're looking at realistically the last 2 weeks of July to get on the track for the first time. And then we are hosting an event with the Ohio Sprint Series August 18th, 19th, and 20th. Now, all of the buildings will not be done. Our timing and scoring building will be done. We actually just met with the company that's providing the steel yesterday on that. That order will go in next week, and that'll arrive early June. World-class timing and scoring building with the one side of the enclosed buildings up top, and the one side of the building will be for mechanics and tuners only. The other side will be for spectators, just to separate the two. But the other buildings will not be done for the first event. So operational, August. The rental carts will arrive in August. And we hope to have a really, really strong, what I call fall club season. 3 to 4 race weekends. Really kind of just dust off, learn, grow. We're going to make mistakes, Bill. I mean, we know that. And then have a grand opening for the whole facility, including the indoor track, in April of 2024.
Wow, it is coming along quickly.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Buckeye Karting Challenge. and now it's the Ohio Sprint Series. So for the listener that might kind of know what it is or might not know what it is, what is it, and what changes can people expect for this year?
Yeah, so the Buckeye Karting Challenge was started by Scott Smith and Scott Benton about 5 years ago. This actually just completed their 5th season. I don't know all the details of how it got started, but I know that both of them race. I know Scott Smith personally for a long time, since I was a little kid in racing, and Scott Benton I met in the last few years. They ran a great series. I mean, it's a regional, statewide. It's the State of Ohio Championship Series, which previously it was ran where Saturday was your practice day and Sunday was your event over 5 race weekends. And Scott Benton, he had the opportunity to step into a new career as an entrepreneur, and he did that, and he's doing very well. I'm really proud of him. I mean, I'm excited for him and his family and the gifts of entrepreneurship that have been provided to him. But it became a challenge for him. From what he's communicated, is that the time was a challenge to put on a level of event that he wanted to. So he was looking to sell. Scott Smith said to me, "Hey, I'm not sure. We're not happening. I'm building a facility. The last thing I wanted to see happen was to see the State of Ohio Series go away. That was going to be devastating, right?" So
yes,
I said to Scott Smith, I said, "Hey, if you guys are seriously looking at either shutting it down or selling it, I'd like to have a conversation with you." That's where it started. And so we acquired the series in January this year. And then we needed to wrap up the banquet from 2022. We did that. And then we made the announcement of the change to the Ohio Sprint Series. And really that came down, and the idea really just came from the feedback. So I raced with guys like Sean Cook from Sean Cook Race Engines or Cook Racing Engines, Richie Warren, Mike Frankenberry, a lot of these, guys that are my age, mid-40s, that ran, and, Staple, and there's a lot of people who were involved in the sport in the late 80s and early 90s, including Scott Smith. And the series then was called the Ohio Sprint Series. So the nostalgia of the Ohio Sprint Series, as I was sharing with people after we acquired it, everybody would say, "Oh, I ran the Ohio Sprint Series. I ran this class. I ran the flathead Briggs. I ran the Yamaha this." And everything was reverting to that. And I just said, you know what? These guys ran a great series for 5 years. They did tremendously well. We are making some changes in the series right now. I said, there's no better time. I believe in taking the Band-Aid off. I don't believe in, let me make 3 changes, Bill, and then I'll do 3 more next year, and I'll do 3 more, and we'll get to where we want to be in 5 years. I just don't subscribe to that methodology at all. We knew what we wanted to do, and the name change was really never part of it. That wasn't. But then when I was getting all these comments about it, I'm like, wait a minute here. We're making all these changes, and the changes really are mirroring how the series was run in the 90s. I said to our marketing and promotions gal that works for us, Red 171, Alexis Rule, she's a great partner. I said to her, I said, why don't we just go back to the roots? And she's like, that's the campaign. Back to the roots, Ohio Sprint Series. And that's where it came from. So there's no secret sauce to this. It's just we are making a lot of changes, and we know that. And so I want to give the credit to the Buckeye Karting Challenge for what they did. That's a legacy. They ran it for 5 successful years. Great. Well, we're going to go back to the roots. And if it's successful, it's the Ohio Sprint Series. If we're not successful, they can lay the claim that say, well, we were successful when we ran it, right? So, so it's not an ego thing at all. It really just came down to the feedback from the customer base.
Yeah, how exciting.
Yeah.
So before we move away from the Ohio Sprint Series, what's the schedule look like for 2023?
Yeah, so we did change the event structure. That is one big change, and we ran the economics on it. And two major changes that we made, I would say 3 actually. The first one being we went to 3 race weekends, 2 events each weekend. So instead of families having to travel 5 times, they travel 3 times. Practice day is now on Friday, which is optional. There's a race event day on Saturday, which is warm-up, qualifying, pre-final, final. And it's timed sessions plus 2 laps, so you'll get more time on the track. Sunday's the same thing. It's a warm up, it's a qualifying, pre-final, final. So in the course of the season, it's 6 races. Best 5 count towards your season points. The second major change that we made is we went to spec tires for certain classes, and the only reason we did that was to keep costs down. And as it's not spec tire, buy as many as you want. It's spec tire, and you're limited to what you can bring. So we knew that will help people lower their cost, the barrier of entry, right? And we partner with Mojo on the 206 series for one reason: the tire lasts forever. My friend Dan Schlosser from Pit Raceway and Pro Car Concepts, he goes, Chris, I ran a set for 52 heat cycles, and the only reason I took them off was because the cords were coming through. They were still running within a 1/10 or 2/10 of a second as heat or cycle number 3. So that's the reason we went to the Mojo tire. The goal is we have 2 guys that are going to run the series this year that are going to run one set the whole year as a case study and see how they do. And they're good drivers, they're good pilots, right? So we'll see what happens. And then the third change is entertainment. This was really the root of Ohio Sprint Series when I was a kid. I remember just the entertainment that was there and the families that would hang out at the track together. So on Friday nights, we're bringing in live band every single Friday night. We're going to do a full dinner meal, live band. We're going to provide beverages, some adult beverages and some non-adult beverages, and we want it to be an atmosphere where these 3 weekends are almost like 3 weekends you go to your cottage or you go on your boat, it's an entertainment weekend for the family. Bring your kids, have a blast, right? Bonfires and all that kind of stuff. So those are the 3 things that we focused on. And so the weekends are, our first kickoff event is June. It's Father's Day weekend. I think it's the 16th, 17th, and 18th. And then it's August 18th, 19th, and 20th. And I think I got my calendar right here. And then it's October 20, 21, 22. That's at the Motorsports Country Club of Cincinnati. So Thompson's the kickoff weekend, Ohio Motorsports Park, or what we're calling the Lorain Ohio KartPlex, racing at the Lock, and Motorsports Country Club, or MCC KartPlex down in Cincinnati.
Awesome. Man, that's exciting. And then there's all different classes?
Yeah.
Like kid, cadet, junior, senior, all that?
The only class we dropped for the 3 weekends is kid kart. Mm-hmm. And it's not that we dropped it because we don't want to include them. We believe as a series that we can provide more value to the parent by running at each local track on a weekend. So, for example, when we're going to pick a weekend to go run Fremont, and it's notified, the Ohio Sprint Series is going to pick up the race entry for any kid kart that shows up. We'll pay for it. We'll bring the trophies. We're going to bring members from the series to provide driver coaching for free to little kids. Encourage them. Help the dads and moms understand the dynamics of a chassis. How does it work? This is on our own time, on our own dime. And so we're looking at doing 5 or 6 of those events across the year. So they'll still be counted for the Ohio Sprint Series championship points, but it's going to be 5 or 6 separate weekends. And it also encourages the parents to get out and look at other club tracks. So we're supporting the clubs. Let them see where these clubs and facilities are at a younger age, so they're, if they want to run the series. So our goal is to see 5 or 6 at minimum at every single one of those races, and to help the parents. Well, like I said, our series, the Ohio Sprint Series, will pay the cost of entry for the driver. So it's, we're trying to create that culture. Outside of that, yes, you're a sportsman or cadet 206. We're going to run mini. On the 2-cycle side, so it'll be just mini engine. If your micros, run the mini weight, run the change of timing on the engine, and then up to masters on both. And then we got 2 special classes, which is the Tillotson class, which is a chance to win a ticket to go race in Spain against the world's best, and then the Rotex ticket, which you'll have a chance to win a fully paid ticket to Newcastle for the U.S. finals. And if you do well there, you can go race in Bahrain. Your whole event is paid for except for your flight.
Wow.
Yeah. So those announcements will be coming. You're the first to hear about all those details. Those announcements are going to be announced in April. So
awesome. Oh, that's so exciting. Very exciting. Is there anything we didn't talk about regarding the motorsports facility, the kart business, 3/10, or the Ohio Sprint Series? Did we cover everything you wanted to cover?
No, Billy, man. This is, I just appreciate you inviting me on, and and diving through some of the sport that gave so much to me and my family too.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about the sport for a little bit longer, and then after that, I just have two quick questions for you. So, motorsports really seems to be growing locally, regionally, nationally. From the grassroots racing up through the professional racing, from a growing fan base. Yeah. What are your perspectives on the motorsports business growth?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Bill. There's no secret that this Drive to Survive series on Netflix has been a game changer. For those that were never really interested in motorsports, these people are listening and watching this Drive to Survive, and they're getting to see the sauce in the pasta, right? They're getting to see how everything's made and the drama, and sure, there's some dramatization to it, but really it's just truth. This is what happens at race weekends, and there are high emotions, and there's big stakes, right? And so I think that TV show has been a catalyst to so many things. Motorsports is a $131 billion industry in the U.S. alone. That's grown double digits in the last 3 years. You really can't attach it to anything else other than that show. Number one. Number two, we're a pretty large country geographically as in relation to other countries where Formula One races. So I understand that. But we now have 3 Formula One events in one country. That's a big deal.
That's true. I didn't think about it like that.
We would not be doing that if the market didn't support it. Okay? The challenge of the COTA down in Austin last year. Largest sporting attendance of any event in the world's history last year. A Formula One event, right?
Yeah.
The economic impact in Vegas this year for the Vegas event, which is the weekend right before Thanksgiving, all projected estimates are north of $1 billion of economic impact to that city over 5 days.
Unbelievable.
Right?
Yeah.
If you want to rent a room that oversees any part of the track, you can't find a room for 3 nights less than $50,000 today. So there's no doubt there's an affluent side to this. We understand that, right? But there's a lot of other areas you can play in the sport that don't require that kind of dough. Mm-hmm. And so I think that the Drive to Survive has been a catalyst. The other thing is this. It's natural for those individuals to watch that show to start looking downstream. How do I get involved in it? You mentioned the 2 guys that walked into Boss Pro Kart. Lee Boss is a great guy. His cousin Brad, I mean, we met with these guys talking about some things as well, and they're great people. And they're watching something to inspire them to say, hey, I want to try this, right? Mm-hmm. Where do they go? They're going to look downstream. So now you got things like Kart Chaser. Xander Clements with Kart Chaser is the YouTube or Facebook. I call it Fakebook. Fakebook, everything's online. You can watch it, and you can get a feel and a flavor for what the sport is at the entry-level point. And he does an amazing job. So you have so many different areas of media today and mediums of messaging that are giving people an open door. Come check it out. I believe that has been the biggest blessing. At the top levels of racing, I'm not here to say that I like the 3-stage racing in NASCAR and all this other stuff. I think that they had to do certain things at the time to try to engage more people. But I would not be surprised in the next handful of years if some of that gets dialed back to just pure racing again, because now you'll have the audience. And mm-hmm. IndyCar's numbers are growing, NASCAR, Formula One. They're getting more and more fans at CCA events than they ever had before, right? Mm-hmm. So it's all going to naturally push downstream. And so I think it is the most exciting time to be in motorsport. I really do. If you ever have a passion for it, whether it's in the driving side, the operations side, the engineering side, the hospitality side, the marketing side, no matter what it is, if you have drive, if you're motivated yourself to go out there and participate a little before you get paid, you can develop a career in motorsports, no problem. I would have that conversation with anybody. I got a guy. The first hire we're making inside of our collective group of companies he's an 18-year-old kid who graduated early in December this year. He's moving here at the end of April. So he's going to live with me for a month or two when he figures out his housing arrangement to start his career as 18 years old.
Wow. Where'd you find him?
He raced for me. So his old man, he met me at an event, and he said, "Hey, can I run with your team?" And he ran with a couple races, and kind of just became friends. And then he knew what we were doing with our facility, and I said, "What are your interests? You want to continue driving?" And he's like, "I actually kind of like the operations and the technical side of it." And I said, "Well, hey, if you're interested in coming to Cleveland, let me know." And he called me. So the initiative of a time 17-year-old kid said, "Hey, when I graduate and I'm 18, I talked to my dad. Can I come work for you?" So that type of initiative, and that kid's going to be just fine. His name's Gavin. I'm super excited for him. Super excited to have him on our team. He will do very, very well inside motorsports as a whole. He's got a career for sure.
Yeah, and so there's this, and I don't like it, but there's this thought that goes through business that kids don't want to work. Nobody wants to get their hands dirty. Nobody wants to get involved. And Gavin's the opposite of that. And I think there's a reason why. One is growing up, he was surrounded by good people that showed him different opportunities. But number two, you as a business owner and a leader have created a culture that attracts good people. And that's another thing I hope people take away is, if you're going to build something, build it to be a talent magnet where people want to come and want to be involved, and they see your vision because you do such a great job explaining it and being excited about it. Hopefully you agree with that.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, opportunity